Massive fraud in the state of Minnesota and what's being done about it.
Federal agents conducting raids at 8 offices and homes yesterday, the latest in a series of high-profile investigations.
America, we just got confirmation of what might be the biggest government fraud scandal in U.S. history. The acting U.S. attorney for Minnesota just admitted that the government fraud in Tim Walz's state will exceed $1 billion. We're talking about fake autism centers, fraudulent housing programs, and the infamous Feeding Our Family scheme where criminals claim to feed 1.6 million meals to children who didn't even exist. But here's the kicker. 1 out of 5 autism centers in Minnesota are currently under federal investigation, and the vast majority of the $100 million in housing claims are completely fraudulent.
Stolen tax dollars. We've learned the scope of government fraud investigations in Minnesota could exceed $1 billion. And that staggering number comes from acting U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Joe Thompson.
What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This is what happens when you elect Democrats who care more about virtual signaling than actually protecting taxpayer money. Tim Walz's Minnesota has become the fraud capital of America. Let me break down this absolutely staggering revelation. U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson sat down for an interview and basically admitted that Minnesota has become a criminal enterprise moonlighting as a state government.
I see $500 million in prosecutions just from your office alone. Is that accurate?
I think it is. Yeah, absolutely.
$500 million just from his office alone. And when asked about the total scope, Thompson said it will exceed $1 billion. Think about that. An entire $1 billion stolen from taxpayers in one state under Tim Walz's watch.
And when his prosecutors finish their investigations, acting U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Joe Thompson, tells me he expects the scope of fraudulent use of taxpayers' money will exceed $1 billion.
Thompson called it an extraordinary problem and said the fraud that's persuasive in this state is unlike anything he's ever seen. This isn't just a few bad actors. This is systematic, organized theft of taxpayer money on an industrial scale.
To me, that's astounding. How do you describe that?
It's an extraordinary problem, and the fraud that's pervasive in this state.
You know what's crazy? While we're talking about billion-dollar government fraud schemes, there's another system that's confusing and full of people trying to take advantage. Medicare. If you're 65 or older, you've probably experienced the same kind of overwhelming bureaucracy that allowed these Minnesota criminals to steal so much money. But here's the difference. Chapter actually fights for you. They're a free service that connects you with trusted advisors who advocate for you, not the insurance companies. No games. They won't push you towards plans that benefit them. Just honest guidance to help you find Medicare coverage that actually works for you and your budget. What I love about Chapter is that their advisors actually take the time to understand your specific needs, explain everything in plain English, and help you make the right choice. Whether you're new to Medicare or thinking about switching, they'll walk you through it step by step. If you want somebody who actually has your back with Medicare, call 270-467-0614 or go to askchapter.org/Tyson. That's askchapter.org/Tyson. Don't let the system take advantage of you like these Minnesota criminals did with the taxpayers. Now back to the autism center scam. Here's where it gets absolutely criminal. 1 out of every 5 autism centers in Minnesota is currently under federal investigation for fraud. These are supposed to be places helping vulnerable children with autism, but instead, they're criminal enterprises stealing Medicaid money.
Medicaid claims from 450 providers totaled $220 million last year.
$220 million in Medicaid claims from 450 providers last year alone. And according to Thompson, the vast majority of these claims are fraudulent. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being stolen from programs designed to help autistic children.
However, in 2021, that rose to $21 million. Then by 2024, taxpayers were footing the bill for $104 million.
Look at this explosion in cost from $2.6 million when the program started to $104 million by 2024. That's not organic growth. That's organized crime moving in to exploit government programs.
According to the search warrant, many of the kids receiving autism services at Smart Therapy did not appear to be autistic. The warrant alleges Smart Therapy hired young relatives who had no formal education and who were usually just on their phones all day,
while billing Medicaid for autism therapy that never happened. And get this, they were even billing for kids who were in Somalia, Jordan, and Kenya at the same time. But the autism fraud is just one piece of this massive criminal enterprise. The Housing Stabilization Service program was supposed to help seniors, disabled people, and those recovering from addiction find stable housing. Instead, it became another ATM for criminals.
Minnesota's Housing Stabilization Services program began in 2020, and according to a warrant, those committing fraud would, quote, recruit Medicaid-eligible individuals who are experiencing housing instability and sign them up.
Here's how the scam worked. Criminals would recruit vulnerable people experiencing homelessness and drug addiction, sign them up for the program, then immediately start billing Medicaid for services they never provided.
According to a search warrant filed in Minnesota District Court, fraudsters would recruit Medicaid-eligible individuals experiencing housing instability and sign them up for the program. Investigators say providers billed the government for services and, quote, immediately began receiving large Medicaid payouts, end quote.
Homeless people struggling with addiction. The most vulnerable people in society, homeless individuals struggling with addiction, were being exploited by criminals who used their information to steal millions from taxpayers. These people got little to no help or services while fraudsters got rich. And here's the most infuriating part. Many of these fraud schemes are connected to the same criminals who ran the Feeding Our Future scam. The FBI raids on autism centers revealed that at least a dozen defendants from the $250 million Feeding Our Future case owned and were associated with the autism clinics.
Now, the 61-page federal search warrant details just how deep this new scheme goes. And new court documents show at least a dozen of the defendants charged for their role in the Feeding Our Future scheme owned, received money from, or were associated with autism clinics.
These are the same people who stole $250 million claiming to feed children who didn't even exist, just moved on to stealing money from autism programs and housing assistance. It's like a criminal franchise operation.
Since 2017, Medicaid reimbursement claims in Minnesota skyrocketed from just under $2 million to more than $250 million.
From $200 million to $250 million in Medicaid claims, that's not program growth. That's organized crime taking over the entire state's healthcare system. So where was Timmy Tampon Walsh during all of this? The guy who was supposed to be Kamala Harris's running mate was presiding over the biggest government fraud scheme in American history, and he did absolutely nothing to stop it.
I've become friends with school shooters.
Since February, GOP Representative Kristen Robbins has led a new committee at the state capitol to address fraud.
In the first week it was open, I think we had like 530 reports.
Since then, well over 700 reports of alleged fraud on this new website.
Over 700 reports of fraud in just the last few months. And this is just what they know about. Acting U.S. Attorney Thompson admitted,
There's a little bit of the tip of the iceberg here. Every time we look under a rock, we find more.
when asked if things are getting better, Thompson couldn't even say yes. I'm pretending to say that, yet I'm hopeful, he said. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement of Walsh's administration's fraud prevention efforts. America, what we're seeing in Minnesota under Tim Walsh is nothing short of a complete breakdown of government oversight and accountability. Over $1 billion in taxpayer money stolen through fake autism centers, fraudulent housing programs, and the infamous Feeding Our Future scheme. 1 out of 5 autism centers are under federal investigation. Criminals billing for services to kids who weren't even in our countries. Vulnerable homeless people being exploited to steal housing assistance money. And the same criminal networks running multiple fraud schemes across different government programs. This is what happens when you elect Democrats who care more about appearing compassionate than actually protecting taxpayer money. They create these massive, poorly supervised government programs and then act shocked when criminals move in to exploit them. Tim Walsh was supposed to be a folksy Midwest governor who would bring competence to the Harris ticket. Instead, he was presiding over the biggest government fraud operation in American history while doing absolutely nothing. The only reason why we're finding out about any of this is because federal prosecutors are finally doing their job. But the damage is already done. Over $1 billion stolen from programs that were supposed to help the most vulnerable people in society. This is our government on Democrats, America. And this is why we can never let them near power again. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.